This is Just Listen, hosted by George. Today is November 24th, 2025. So, this is Thanksgiving week. I'm hoping that everybody is getting ready to enjoy their families. Today, I want to talk about the U.S. federal government policy on constitutional executive power by the Trump administration on immigration and Venezuela policies. Why am I talking about this? Well, there was something a little bit disturbing this week that happened when 6 or 7 U.S. senators said to the active duty military and to all of the armed forces to not follow unlawful orders. I want to give a little bit of background and then on immigration and then on Venezuela policy, and then I can wrap it up with an actual opinion. All right, so on immigration, as you well know, I've talked about this several times, but there's been some recent policy trends, and also the mainstream media is still finding the people with the worst case scenarios and putting them front and center on TV. So, focus on enforcement. There has been continued focus on increasing border security and interior enforcement of immigration laws, right? So, the executive, which is the Trump administration, is enforcing laws. Asylum restrictions. In mid 2024, new restrictions on asylum applications at the southern border were implemented. Why were they implemented? Well, we had people coming into the country that they weren't sure if they had criminal records, etc. Enforcement priorities. Enforcement priorities have been adjusted with recent pause on most deportations to review priorities and focus on those who pose a threat to national security, public safety, or border security. So if you look at all three of these, which I've talked about in the past, and we're talking about executive power, which is constitutionally mandated to the executive branch of our country. Now, if I go back to what I've seen on the news, one thing that I'd like to point out to you is people that are being put in detention are those that came to the U.S. legally, but then after that, they didn't check back in. And a lot of that is because, and this is an opinion, so there are fees and processing fees when you update any kind of paperwork. It's not just an immigration, it's any type of deal where even when you get a license, you have to pay a fee. Okay, so what's happening and what's been said on the news a lot is people have been here since 9, 10, 11 years. They've gotten married, they have families. Okay, so why didn't these people get their paperwork updated? Because according to the law, they were supposed to leave the country. Now, that sounds a little harsh. We have to have a little bit of personal responsibility too. Don't throw up your hands, because something else that's misleading too is that ICE is randomly picking up people, and that's not true unless they are known people committing crimes and etc. So those are two different things. And the mainstream media is trying to blend them together to make it sound like that ICE is just picking up people at random based on what you look like. Now, they cannot do that, and they're not doing that. They have this database, and that's what they are looking at. Now, The U.S. federal government is also involved in other immigration related matters such as immigrant integration, tracking demographics, and addressing the economic impact of immigration. Now, this one is important and needs to be talked about a little bit more, addressing the economic impact of immigration. Now, most of you that live around here have gotten your roofs redone over the last year and a half. Well, it looks like that it's heavily Hispanic working on the roofs. Also, there's been cable run, and it seems to be high Hispanic too. Now, I'm going to tell you why this is actually happening, something that I found out recently. Okay, so when this is happening, the people that are here legally don't get the same jobs. And doing roofs, running cables, they probably pay pretty well. Now, this is a complicated part to why employers are doing that. But if you walk around and you go into some of the stores like Lowe's and Home Depot, you're going to see the same thing. The workforce is changing. Now, you can go and look this up, but all you really need to do is just walk around and see what's happening outside of your doors. The economic impact is something that hasn't been talked about, and people that are here legally or have been here for a long time, meaning born here and all that stuff, because this part is a little complicated. I want to say the traditional Americans. I hate to put labels on stuff, but when they're 18 and they get out of high school, they can't take these jobs, which pay pretty well, because someone else who's here illegally might be in those positions. So please look at the economic impact. So the other point I want to bring out is the differences with Europe. Why Europe? Now, there's something that keeps coming up that I want to draw your attention to. It seems like that if your country is labeled a wealthy nation, then the impression that I get, or the perception, is you're supposed to let massive amount of people in the country and help them start a new life. Now, I'm going to tell you why that's important. So, Europe, its immigration policy is more restrictive, and they are more concerned about bringing people into their country with skills. And the other countries like that are Canada, Australia, Germany. So they prioritize skilled workers, while the U.S. relies more heavily on family reunification, which I thought was interesting. So what is family reunification? Well, family reunification is one of our key principles in the U.S. of legal immigration. So it's the law is about reuniting families. The INA, which is the Immigration Nationality Act that Congress passed, allows for a set number of visas for family-sponsored immigrants each year, with no annual limit for spouses, parents, children of U.S. citizens. Now that's huge. No one has talked about that except for me. Now look at the makeup of the families that are immigrating, okay? Our main biggest policy is we're not looking for skilled labor. We're looking at reuniting families. So if we want that changed, that would be done by Congress. Also, in case you didn't know, there's something called diversity. A portion of the annual visas are designated for a diversity lottery, which promotes a wider variety of immigrants. That is the biggest difference between us and the Europeans. Now, I also looked up, since we're talking about rich countries, I looked up Dubai. And Dubai, so for Dubai, that's one of the Arabian countries. There's no direct application process for citizenship. It is granted through nomination by the government or royal court to eligible individuals such as investors, doctors, scientists, and other skilled talents. Okay, so Dubai's rich, but I don't hear anybody calling them out because of their immigration policy. And that is the thing that's interesting to me. No one gets called out but the U.S. about their immigration policy, and there are other rich nations. So the United Arab Emirates, I looked them up. Collectively, they're worth $3 or $4 trillion, and that's all profit. But that would be another show. Okay, so if it's based on being a rich country, they need to start taking more people as well to help out too. It can't just be the United States doing that. Now, let me talk about the Venezuela policy. So the U.S. has a policy targeting Venezuela for drug trafficking, viewing it as a national security threat linked to illegal immigration. So that's the blend of illegal immigration with Venezuela. We've also accused them of letting the criminal network come into our country to bring the drugs, while the Venezuelan government is turning a blind eye to it. So when we tried sanctions, that was a long time ago. So this isn't a new problem with Venezuela. It just some enforcement just started January 20th of this year, and we also want them to have free elections, pressure negotiation to address narcotics, like I said. And that's a huge problem. Now, if you've been watching TV, you know why it's turned into such a big thing is because they're bringing drugs over here. Now, I said that a little quickly with Venezuela, but immigration and the Venezuela policy are two policy enforcement things that have been going on at least 20 years that the executive branch hasn't done anything about up until January 20th. So, to culminate what I'm saying, about a week ago, like I told you earlier, some senators were telling the military not to follow unlawful orders. Now, everybody knows about fentanyl coming into the country. And prior to January 20th, it didn't look like that they were trying to stop him at all. At the state level, and ISIS hands were tied to not do enforcement. And the senators were telling all military people not to follow unlawful orders. Well, if you're in the military or have ever been in there, you know that that's not true. You cannot follow orders. And the judicial branch, if the president is out of line, will do that. Will they look at the policies that the executive branch, and in this case President Trump, have? But the bottom line is, for military members, do not, and this is just an opinion now, don't listen to that, because it is dangerous rhetoric coming from senators who won't get in trouble either way if you all of a sudden say that you don't want to follow orders. All you're going to do is get yourself in trouble. And if you seriously don't want to follow orders, wait till your term of service is over and then get out. But I believe that it's irresponsible of any sitting senator to tell you to not follow unlawful orders. And they're actually putting you in danger of ruining your career based on their opinion. And if you go and do something, they're not going to bail you out. They can't. They don't have the power to step in and say, nope, you can't take that guy out because he refused to follow that order. So this is Just Listen. Let me know what you think and have a great day.